This episode has been sponsored by Manscaped.
Everdark, Episode 106, Well of All Souls. Last on Everdark, Julian and Damon find themselves in a museum full of dead people, killed by the Cali vampire Kara, who believed rule under Damon was worse than death. Though Julian was able to get through to Arceus and House Winter, the press have already made their way to the museum. Now we turn back to Caemorn. Caemorn drew in a deep breath. Ghosts had a smell, or rather the energy they emitted did. Ozone, that sharp scent given off during a rainstorm after a crack of lightning hit the ground. He breathed in the scent deeply, relishing it, for it was the smell of power. "How many are there?" Balthazar asked. "They're like a sea of ghosts. I can't tell one from another." Caemorn glanced over at the Iros vampire and felt a faint stab of amusement. Balthazar was unnerved. To a Cali vampire, the Well of All Souls was a gold mine. No, more than that. The possibilities with so many ghosts here were limitless. All these souls could power his spells forever, even if he spent them with abandon. To all other vampires, the well and the spirits it drew were just a reminder of what they wanted to avoid: a second death.
"Countless,"
Caemorn answered with a shrug.
"It is said that every being comes through here at least once."
Why? What purpose does this place have?
It was Christian who asked that. Christian's silver eyes reflected the blue-white glow of the spirits. He was fascinated, not afraid. That was good. While it was clear that Christian was cautious, he did not have the atavistic fear most others did, being this close to true death. He wondered how an Iros could have the soul of a Cali.
"None can say."
Caemorn answered.
"There are theories, of course, but theories are not truth. The Well of All Souls is beyond comprehension."
Fiona made a sound like a cat sneezing.
You don't believe that. You believe you can know everything. So what is your theory, Caemorn? Or do you want to hoard it to yourself like dragon treasure?
Her gaze was on the well, too, but she showed none of Christian's fascination for it. But she didn't look as unnerved as Balthazar either. Strangely, she appeared as if she recognized this place and didn't like it. Both she and Balthazar supposedly had been reincarnated. They must have come here. Did she faintly remember it? If you're going to be Christian's teacher, lying isn't a good start. Balthazar's keen gaze was back on him. And you should remember that there are no secrets from me. I can just pluck them out of your head. Caemorn grimaced.
"That is why no one likes Iros vampires."
My heart bleeds. Balthazar sneered. Now start being honest. Another grimace. Cali vampires liked their secrets. It was what gave them an advantage over one another. But not here, at least. He would have to see how much he could hide from Balthazar. "Nothing, Caemorn. You can hide nothing," the Iros vampire said with a significantly lifted eyebrow. Caemorn grimaced again, but then he shook off this detriment. He was never one to wallow in what he could not change. He went with whatever obstacle presented itself. He tented his fingers, perhaps telling someone his theory would be useful, pressure-checking his own ideas. Though Balthazar was a fool, this earned him a sharp glance. Fiona and Christian might have some insight.
"I believe that this is the choosing point,"
Caemorn said, his voice making clear that the words should be capitalized.
What are the choices?
Christian took a step forward as he asked this, but Balthazar clamped a hand down on his right shoulder. Caemorn did smile at this. Balthazar was going to have his hands full with Christian, as if that wasn't already completely obvious. When they'd spoken back by the ruined cottage, though, Caemorn had known it was not in Balthazar's nature to be violent. He had still expected blows and for Christian to be put in his place. For a wild moment, Caemorn had considered stepping in if that happened to protect Christian. But nothing bad had happened. In fact, it had been a good conversation between master and fledgling. cleared the air, and it was nothing that Caemorn had ever had with his master. It felt strange, almost happy for Christian, yet sad for himself. Choices, Caemorn, Balthazar demanded, but there was something in his gaze that said, "You don't need to think about that. I'm not Roan Tithe and you aren't Callie, so let it go."
Whether to go beyond or stay and live again.
Caemorn answered.
Reincarnation?
Fiona clarified.
Why sound so skeptical? After all, both you and Balthazar are reincarnated immortals.
Caemorn reminded her tersely.
Yes.
She agreed, though her gaze skittered away from him.
But maybe immortals are the antithesis of death. Maybe they can't go beyond, so they are forced into life again. Life eternal. That doesn't mean that everyone has the choice of coming back.
You make it sound like no one would.
Christian said.
Would you? There might be great wonders beyond.
She gestured towards the well.
That is a wonder in itself. How strange that this should be in the Everdark and not on Earth. Are these human souls?
They are. There is a symbiosis of some sort between Earth and the Everdark. A yin and a yang, perhaps.
Caemorn shrugged. It was yet another mystery that drew him. Once this war against Callie ended, he would no longer be burdened as he was before being preceptor. He could investigate the Everdark to his content.
There's so much we might never know.
Fiona whispered and looked into that radiance as if there were answers that she desperately wanted. Caemorn wondered about her past as Wyvern. Perhaps she had lost someone she could not turn. Or maybe they died in the war and left this plane. Did she remember any of it? Or did her heart just ache? She'd always kept herself apart, as if she feared contact with others, except for Arceus. That was the one friendship that she had seemed to bloom under. Or perhaps there is nothing. Maybe one is simply turned into energy and recreated as a planet, or something, Balthazar said with a shrug. He, evidently, had no desire to leave life.
You cannot believe that, Balthazar.
Fiona's arms were crossed over her chest tightly.
Can't you feel the purpose here?
All I feel is cold, uncomfortable, and hungry, Balthazar quipped. Christian smiled at him.
Then we mustn't keep you any longer from the comfort of your manor.
He turned back to the well, and his smile became a grim look of determination.
I need to speak with Julian's parents. How do I do this, Caemorn?
There was the slightest hesitation on his part, and Balthazar's head snapped towards him. Caemorn, tell me you know how to use this thing to locate Julian's parents, and that you didn't bring my fledgling out here on a hunch. Caemorn narrowed his eyes at the Iros vampire.
There has not been a speaker to the dead in my lifetime, nor yours, nor Fiona's, at least in this life anyway. So, everything is a hunch. I was just gathering my thoughts.
Balthazar opened his mouth and pointed at Caemorn's chest. Gathering your... Christian grasped his master's wrist and gently lowered the accusatory arm.
It's okay, Balthazar. Caemorn's hunches are pretty good. Besides, he's all we've got, and I'm willing to try anything.
Balthazar pinched the top of his nose. That's what I'm afraid of.
So where do we begin?
Christian asked Caemorn.
We must approach the well, and I do not think it wise for Fiona or Balthazar to accompany us.
Caemorn said.
The ghosts are disturbed by our kind, and it seems even more so by the immortals.
In fact, the souls were keeping a wide berth from Fiona and Balthazar. They were like rocks in a river that split the stream. Spirits were pouring in from every direction, but avoiding them like the plague. They can keep their distance. Balthazar made a mow of distaste.
The faster I do this, the faster we can leave.
Christian kissed Balthazar's cheek after he said this. But when Christian made to move towards the well once again, Balthazar put a restraining hand on his fledgling's shoulder. Christian, Balthazar said through gritted teeth, casting nervous glances at the well. I don't like this.
I know, but I need to try and help the Harrows.
Christian told him gently. We have no idea if this is going to work, Balthazar hissed. Caemorn only gives it a 25% chance.
Regardless if it works as we hope or not, it will teach Christians something.
Caemorn told him. You mean it will teach you something? Balthazar shook his head in disgust. This well fascinates you, and it has since you first read about it.
Indeed, and I was the one to rediscover it.
Caemorn said proudly. Balthazar might know that from reading his thoughts, and Fiona knew it from their long acquaintance, not to mention his accomplishments were required reading for all members of the Order. But Christian had not known it, and for some reason he wanted to impress the young man.
I know the well seems frightening,
Christian began.
It doesn't seem Christian. It is.
Fiona said wryly. Christian smiled back at her.
I suppose it is. But if it helps the Harrows, I will embrace it.
Now that is the correct spirit.
Caemorn said. Balthazar shot him a look. Caemorn ignored it. Christian removed Balthazar's hand from his shoulder, kissed it, and stepped over to Caemorn. Don't let anything happen to him, Caemorn, Balthazar warned.
Even if it is good.
Caemorn lifted an eyebrow.
No more bickering. I know you two enjoy it, but we've got work to do.
As a vampire, I can tell you that I like my man to have a close shave before we, dine. So I make sure that he uses top quality products from Manscaped to get that clean and smooth look and feel all over. No razor burn when I put my lips anywhere on his body, from down there to his throat. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is what I recommend before spending from dusk till dawn, getting to know whether he and I will be spending eternity together. With an advanced dual head system and skin-safe blades, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is a next-gen groomer that'll give you the power to trim, shave, and shape your hair to your liking, and mine. Designed to give you a skin-close shave, almost as sharp as my fangs, use skin-safe trimmer blade to take a little off the top, then go in with a skin-safe foil blade for a smooth finish. If anything or anyone is going to draw blood, it won't be your blades from Manscaped. It'll be me. Take it to the shower. As you know, vampires just love modern plumbing. Our king, after all, adores a good rinse. This waterproof trimmer doesn't mind getting a little wet. Whether you're touching up or going into detail, both blades can be used wet or dry, saving time and cleanup for other things. I do so hope that you check out Manscaped and its amazing products. Believe me, they are vampire approved. To get 20% off and free shipping, use the code VAMPIRE at www.manscaped.com. Remember, use the word vampire to get 20% off and free shipping.
Christian then started walking towards the well without him. Caemorn and Balthazar shared a look, before Caemorn found himself hurrying after the young man. As soon as they were 10 feet from Balthazar and Fiona, the stream of ghosts ran all around them, skating between their legs. The well was 20 feet in diameter and stood 3 feet tall. The stones, like all the massive buildings in the Everdark, were made of strange white stones. He had tried to examine them to see if there were any markings upon them, but the flow of ghosts was simply too thick. He wondered now if he could bring either Fiona or Balthazar near the well later. Their presence repelled the ghosts, so they might clear a path.
Perhaps Damon would come here with me and we could investigate together.
Caemorn immediately pushed that thought down as he felt Balthazar's smirk in his direction. Besides, his investigations of the well were secondary for right now. He glanced over at his companion. Christian's gaze was mostly locked on the well, but he occasionally looked up at the ruined arches of stone above them, as if trying to reconstruct what this place had once been. Caemorn believed that the structure had been constructed around the well. The stone was different. The well appeared as if it had grown, more than built, as if it had bloomed out of the very earth. He guessed, though, that it, too, had been built around something else. He imagined what it would have been like to set these stones with all of the souls passing by. He was already growing numb, even though as a vampire he was immune to cold. Christian picked up one foot and winced.
Ah, my skin feels like it's being frozen.
The spirits draw energy from us to manifest themselves physically.
Caemorn explained. People, even if they had been vampires, had undoubtedly died creating the well.
Did they build it so that they could simply worship it, or harness its power in some way?
The werewolf ghosts were quite physical.
Christian remarked dryly. Caemorn chuckled.
Yes, indeed, they were. They drew energy from the cottage. The place of death is powerful. But these spirits did not die here. They are drawn here, forced to come.
Forced to choose?
Christian asked.
Or perhaps their fate is chosen for them. Perhaps there is a reason for them being here. Things that they can only learn on this plane as opposed to whatever is beyond.
Caemorn pressed his lips together.
You will be able to learn what that is, Christian. What is beyond this place.
Christian rubbed his hands over his arms, chilled.
First things first, the Harrows.
Caemorn nodded.
As I said, all spirits are drawn here. The power of a Cali vampire keeps them from completing this journey. But still there is a connection between the spirits and this place. If you focus, I believe you will be able to find those threads and
follow them back to where the Harrows are.
Christian cried, his face lighting up with understanding.
Indeed.
Caemorn nodded in approval.
You understand these things instinctively, just like a Cali vampire would.
I don't know about that.
Christian scrubbed the back of his neck. It was Caemorn's turn to put a hand on Christian's shoulder.
You are the speaker to the dead. Not one has been seen for over 1,000 years. Even in vampire terms, what you are is rare and precious. That means you are special in and of yourself, Christian.
I don't believe in inherent worth. Or maybe I believe that everyone has some, but circumstances fill in the rest.
Christian answered a little stiffly.
If that were the case, then why is Elgar not the speaker to the dead? With the devotion he shows to the Iras's skull, he could be mistaken for a Cali vampire.
Caemorn pointed out. Christian smiled for a brief moment, but it died.
There's another side to this coin, Caemorn. If something specifically about me made me the speaker to the dead, what is it? It's not any great wisdom or religiosity. In fact, I've always been a skeptic. The Scully to Julian's Mulder.
Caemorn frowned at the last reference, but he understood the overall gist of what the young man was saying.
You fear something is wrong with you.
Christian paused, and then nodded.
But I also thought that I was responsible for David's actions. I think it is in my nature to blame myself.
Do not look for faults in yourself, Christian. Look for genius.
Caemorn smiled. Christian shook his head.
I can see how you got so far ahead.
And why people call him arrogant, Balthazar called out.
Quiet!
Caemorn shot a repressive look back at the Iros vampire.
Christian needs silence for this. If you are capable of that, Balthazar.
He's mentally sticking his tongue out at you.
Christian smirked.
That is about his age. Now, Christian, I know this might be uncomfortable, but I think you should submerge yourself into the flow of ghosts in a cross-legged position and meditate.
What? Balthazar cried and began to stride forward, but Fiona held him back.
It's okay.
Christian waved his master off. He turned back to Caemorn.
I already can hardly feel my legs. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to stay down there.
It's for the Harrows.
Caemorn reminded him.
Yes, true. I'll do it, no matter what it takes.
Christian said with grim determination.
Remember to focus on the Harrows. Use your most poignant memories of them.
Caemorn advised. Christian nodded. Caemorn did not have to be an Iros vampire to know that Balthazar was now chomping at the bit to stop this, but he was staying away. For now. Recognizing that his master's patience would not be everlasting, Christian drew in a deep breath and sat down on the ground just 2 feet from the well. His head was submerged beneath a wave of ghosts. Caemorn watched the faces that formed in the blue-white fog. There was a woman screaming, a man crying, a child looking out in bewilderment. Hands formed. Fingers plucked at him, but he was only able to give a little energy to any single ghost, so they could not truly touch him. There were a few peaceful ghosts, but not many. It made him grateful to be a vampire. True death did not look inviting. He wondered what Christian was seeing down there in the flood of ghosts. He hoped the young man had closed his eyes. Caemorn drew out a few soul gems. Since he was here, he might as well fill up his stock. He was siphoning a woman's soul into a gem when he felt a touch on his mind. At first he thought it was Balthazar, but no, it was familiar, and not in a good way. He froze and made to open his mouth to cry out, but he couldn't. He couldn't speak, he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything. "Did you really think it would be wise to come here of all places, Caemorn?" Callie asked, his voice slithering through Caemorn's mind.
I thought only Iros vampires could do this. Communicate mind to mind.
Caemorn found himself answering. He thought of the magical weapon he carried and had chosen with such care from the armory. It could do nothing against a ghost. Nothing against Callie. There was a breathy chuckle. This voice held no sex, no accent, but there was a familiar sense, like a taste on the tip of his tongue. "Here, my child, among all of the dead, I am supreme." Caemorn swallowed as he suddenly realized how foolish this idea had been. Of course, Callie would have power here of all places, even if he was in lasting. And of course, Callie had hidden from him all the things he could do. The faces of the ghosts were no longer screaming silently as they were pulled into the well. Instead, it was smiling up at him.
Balthazar, why aren't you hearing my thoughts now?
Caemorn shouted, but he knew that the Iros vampire wasn't hearing him.
But he will realize he can't hear my thoughts in a moment. He'll figure out something is wrong and have Fiona get us out of here.
"You're relying upon Balthazar for help," the ghost laughed. "Now that shows just how far you have fallen."
He's Iros.
Caemorn hissed, and immediately knew he'd been drawn into revealing something he likely shouldn't have. The ghost's face showed a blankness for a moment. "I see."
They're coming back. All of the immortals. You and Sia are not the only ones.
Caemorn snapped. He found anger burning in him for a very unexpected reason.
How many lies did you tell me?
The blankness went away, and the ghost gave him a wicked smile. "You thought you were special,"
I am your fledgling.
Caemorn whispered, and knew he was a fool. Unlike the love that Balthazar had for Christian, and even Elgar or Damon had for Julian, his master had no love for him, no tenderness, no regard, and evidently had lied to him. Thinking of Christian, he wondered,
What is happening to him?
"Oh, are you worried about him now?" The ghost laughed. "You sent him in there without any knowledge of what it would do to him. He has no training, and you throw him into the deep end of the pool." Caemorn gritted his teeth. "Cat got your tongue?" "Oh, no, I do," the ghost smirked. "You are powerless against me, Caemorn. We are called masters for many reasons. We control our fledglings. There is nothing you can do against me." Caemorn's eyes narrowed.
Balthazar gave Roan Tithe his second death.
The ghost snarled. "That was because he's Iros. You are just a simple vampire, not an immortal. You are nothing against me." And that was when the stream of souls suddenly stopped going into the well, and instead it rose up. Individual spirits, hundreds of them, no, thousands, no more than that, all appeared. They were glaring at Caemorn. They all had Callie's sentience behind their eyes. Callie laughed. "Let me show you just how insignificant you are, my child." And the ghosts attacked. Join us next time for episode 107, Hiding in Plain Sight.
Original work is harder and harder to find. In a world full of reactions, commentary, plagiarism, and generic ChatGPT content. And I'm really glad you found us. Every word of the story is from me, typed into my laptop while sitting on my couch. And a real person spoke every word into a microphone as well, not an AI voice. I got into producing stories because I care about entertaining you, the human who's listening to this right now. And while we certainly could have had a bot army to listen to episodes, leave realistic comments, and make us look really popular, it just wouldn't be satisfying. I'm glad you're with me for this story, and I would love it if you left a comment just to say hello.